This is McLeod Insights, where we feature conversations with longtime transportation industry veterans who are now team members at McLeod Software. Our goal is to support and empower our customers by helping them learn about proven ideas and best practices that will have a positive impact on how they run their companies. Let's dive in.
Hello and welcome to McLeod Insights. Today my guest is Thorny Embly, who is the Director of Operations here at McLeod Software. Hello, Thorny.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Appreciate you taking the time and joining us today. So your current role here at McLeod is Director of Operations. Give me a brief synopsis of what that is, and then let's talk about what your history is in the trucking industry.
Okay, so as Director of Operations, I am responsible for four teams within the operations side. So we sell software, and the service side is the implementation of that software and all the teams that make up and comprise that process, from sales, completing the contracts, all the way through install and training. And so I work with several and lead several teams to provide good customer experiences, always working towards doing better and being flexible in a market that sometimes has different demands based on different customers, different types of needs, and working on just focusing on team effort, growth, one McLeod, one process, one success, and helping develop the future leaders of this company and of the markets that we work in.
So you spent, from what I understood, many years in the trucking industry.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your history there.
So I worked in trucking for 32 years. I started aging myself back in '85. In the actual LTL is what I started with as a franchise up in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and spent probably 7 or almost 10 years doing LTL, but also developing truckload, rail. We got into dedicated fleets, flatbeds, warehousing. So we really expanded our service model to handle a lot of different modes in trucking. I was a part owner of Brokerage for 10 years. So I've done a lot of different types of trucking, the different modes, from truckload to expedited shipments to LTL, dedicated fleets, jockey service, full service, warehousing. So we've, my experience level really is pretty vast across the different modes. Surely don't know everything, but I'm seasoned in a lot of different areas, and I have a lot of experience.
Now, was your roles mainly in the operations side?
Initially, yes. So I started out first day working on a dock and grew into supervisory role, dispatching, but also got into the sales aspect as well. So from the operational side, I've done everything from payroll to HR duties to managing growth and working with dispatchers and really the holistic side of all the operation. In those years, I also grew into being customer facing from an operational perspective. So my sales perspective is operationally minded. So I sell a service. This is what it can and can't do, and this is how much it costs. And then grew into the analytical sides of profitability, rating, the analysis side of how we're doing, and then the adjustments of the process to improve and become more flexible, more nimble, and adjusting to customer needs.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk in servicing customers and supplying their needs. And I think there's becoming a shift in the market, in the industry, to focus more on their operation side and the efficiency in operation. So I want to kind of gear the conversation toward that. But one main question that I think every customer asks is, how do you measure efficiency? How do you measure the big term years ago was KPIs. You don't hear that often, but how do you measure operational ratio? Is it profit? Is it revenue per week, revenue per truck, revenue by agent? What's one of the measurements that you see companies today on how they measure success? And what did you do in the past to measure success for your company?
Yeah, I would say at the end of the day, profitability and I say the expense analysis, the revenue expense, all of those things drive how different companies measure those KPIs or what those metrics are. When you consider how much it costs me to run a truck up and down the road from an asset side, and from that perspective, it's understanding what those costs are, and then backing into what metric I use. I might do revenue per mile. You might be revenue per day or revenue per week, number of miles per week. And because those metrics tend to be a quick analysis of where do I sit in profitability. So if one of my customers, as a customer advocate here at McLeod, they looked at revenue per week. So their expectation was if this driver made X amount of dollars or above, he was profitable, based off of their historic trends of average miles that they're driving, things like that. I've seen customers or carriers that would measure just by how many days that their drivers are on the road, because of the consistency of their business, that if we can take that 5 days and add a 6th day, all of this is more falls to the profit line. But again, the traditional is revenue per mile. What are we netting from a total miles versus just loaded miles? So there's a lot of different means that you can do that, but it's based off, in my opinion, everything's based off of profit and what those costs, the associated costs are to run that company.
Yeah, I think you have to keep costs down, obviously. Yeah. You talk about revenue per mile. That there's a correlation in revenue per mile and driver retention, I think. Drivers feel like they have to get a certain amount of miles and get paid a certain amount per miles, or they're going to jump ship to another company. And that's bad for the industry. But I know companies have different incentives for different driver types. I think they're trying a little bit of everything to keep good drivers. There's always going to be some bad ones that you may be happy if they leave, but there's good drivers in the industry, and there is a correlation. But what I'm curious about is the profitability and the revenue per mile. Drivers want to be at home on the weekends. These lanes are getting shorter and shorter for regional. Do you see that in some of the customers that you're talking with these days, that their lanes are getting shorter to keep their drivers at home?
No, I would agree with that statement. That I relate it to what we talk about within my teams is life work balance. There is the old style trucker that goes out on the road for 3 months at a time, or a month at a time, or weeks at a time, is decreasing. And I think you notice that, and a big indicator for me is a lot of the big trucking companies that have started to regionalize and do more trailer hubs, where they're splitting loads and traveling by regions, because it affords the driver the opportunity to be home on a weekend or to get home on a Wednesday. I worked with one driver in the brokerage I worked when, we had to get him through the house every Wednesday because him and his wife had an appointment that they would go to. So that was his big caveat. He didn't really care about anything else. He just, on a Wednesday, I had to get him through the house. So I think life balance is a shift that's come probably in the last 10, 15 years. I mean, it's been a slow adopter, but it's really coming along where people want to be home. And but the drivers that are out on the road longer are the ones that tend to make more money.
Yeah.
And so they're driven by that aspect of, this is what I want to do. But life balance is really, I think, is in our culture today is a critical component of any trucking company.
Yeah, most drivers that I know are very competitive, and you have to, if you show that what other drivers are doing to all your drivers, then they'll want to be the leader in their area. They want to be able to get those miles. So there's always going to be driver competition. One of the business principles is how companies measure success. Does driver retention stand out to you as a way to measure success?
I think it does, again, in that work-life balance of driver retention and the cost to replace them, the loss of revenue. If you think back even to 2009, 2010, the recession, there were a lot of trucks sitting against the fences. And part of what's really come out of that is that swing back in drivers, because they it sounds mean and it's not intended to be, they're a commodity. They're a very, very valuable commodity of your business. They're human beings, but you need a body in there to generate that revenue. So retention is a huge piece, I think should be a huge piece of every trucking company's business. If each truck is going to generate 100,000 miles a year running on the road, and that equates to revenue, there's an expectation of that revenue. So keeping them running and keeping that happy is vital. I mean, it sounds silly, but I remember when I started driving trucks, when I got my CDL back in early 80s or late 80s, it's I learned with a truck that had no power steering, no radio. You wind down the windows and then you drive fast because that's how you cool the cab. Now, I mean, a truck is somebody's office, and there's a lot of comfort that's put into that, and there's a lot of money spent to make them comfortable, because that's what they do every day. So you get the air seats and the air ride trucks and all the comforts and features, and over road trucks you got TVs and satellites and microwaves and refrigerators. But that's where they live for a good portion of their life.
It is their office, and it's funny that you mentioned that. I read something the other day about the truck manufacturers are more automatic trucks compared to manual transmission trucks, because the younger generation, they don't know how to drive manual. Yep. I've got 4 kids, and I don't know that they would be able to put a car in gear and move. They don't know how to drive manuals these days. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. But the advancements from the manufacturer side in the improvements in the automatic transmissions is dramatically different than 20 years ago. The ability to automate and have an automatic transmission that actually drives and shifts the way that the truck is supposed to.
Yeah.
Because there's actually a tremendous amount of savings in economy because it's shifting properly.
You have those guys in certain companies who all they look at is miles per gallon for that truck. Absolutely. And that's how they measure how that driver is driving, right. Whether it's a hard stop, hard start. Yeah. That's what they measure is miles per gallon.
And one interesting story, so the company I worked for years, the fleet average miles per gallon was a critical component for us. Mm-hmm. We did manage it because every 0.1 savings increase in fuel economy was probably $125,000 a year. I mean, it's significant. The more that you could lend yourself to that, and the more you spoke to that and coached that, and and drove those processes was savings that falls at the bottom line.
Now, obviously, owner-operator companies would be different in this next question, but do you think it's good for the drivers that companies offer driver choices on loads?
Sure, it depends on the culture. But I do believe that in a lot of situations, drivers having choices allows them to either manage their income, manage where they're going. I've got a cousin in this area. I'd like to stop by and see them, and just manage where they're going because of weather. Some people don't want to be up in Chicago area because, hey, a snowstorm's coming. Some people don't want to go into New York City or up into New England. That those lines that have been there for as long as I've been in trucking are still there. There are some people that are just fearful of going to different areas, and if they have a choice, they won't go. California is, and nothing against California, but the thing about it is with the rules and regulations, and some people just that line is their stopgap. So giving choices, I think, allows people to be happy with what they're doing. And again, going back to driver retention, and I still know different customers or different carriers that you're going to go where I send you, and we're going to do our best, but there's still a relationship and there's an expectation of what that is. But
you have to manage that driver to driver manager relationship, and that's at every company,
right.
and you'll have to manage that. You mentioned something that I found was interesting. There's a lot of optimization tools out there to drive efficiency. We do a lot of math for people in deciding which is the best truck or best broker option for this load, but the math gets complicated. We can do it. There's optimization tools that can do it, but we can't factor in weather yet. I thought that was interesting. And when we get to that point where there are tools out there who alert us on weather changes in different areas, once we do that, then optimization will grow rather quickly as well.
Well, I definitely agree with that. And I think even in some of the tools we have, lane preference, even in the driver choice side, there's a lot of good aspects of that learning, the AI side of it, which, I think technology will continue shifting into. What are my preferences? Where do I go historically? And then only offer those things. Again, limiting, if you have 1,000 orders on your board and you're trying to offer me this small piece of it, where do I want to go? And I think that's where that AI, that technology shift will continue to go to.
Yeah, I agree.
But still allow that opportunity of, hey, it's the middle of winter where I'm at now. I want to go to Florida, and so but there's capabilities where those options are still available. So it's not like pigeoned right into this is all that I do.
So let's shift the conversation a little bit over to brokerage, and I'm curious about there are really two types of brokerage operations: a buy and sell type, which is been known as the Chicago style because they grew it in that area, but the buy and sell or the cradle to grave. So the customers that you visit and what you worked in the past, which is more popular, or what do you see customers doing these days? Is there a trend going one way or the other?
I think the trend is more towards the Chicago style, the buy and sell, partially because the entry to the market is a lot cheaper. It's easier for small brokers to open and develop with small, inexpensive software, and you develop that quick churn of getting business and pulling it through. I think the more traditional tends to be more of the asset complement. I've got brokerage to complement my business, but and I don't think they'll ever go away, but I think the technology shift in the last 10 years ish, but it just continues the new developments, the new opportunities to improve the buy and sell by using technology and automation to minimize the number of people it takes to grow that business. So because it then becomes I say, more profitable overall from the entry into the market, all the way through adding technology as your business grows, with really, I say, least cost to grow that business.
There's a lot of tools out in the market today that complement brokerage operations on pricing. I think that some lend themselves to make a certain type of operations more scalable, more faster, with bringing in new employees who don't have any experience. And the buy and sell option is one that they can come right in. Hey, you're assigned, negotiate this freight rate. Here are the tools to help you price it, compared to a cradle to grave where they own that relationship the whole time. And then there's some give and take always in that relationship. But I think there's a lot of complementary pieces in the software market.
Sure. Again, in that buy and sell, when you're using those tools to provide, I say, the younger generation, and the people to come in and say, here are your limitations, here's your high, here's your low, here's your range that you can sell this, and then here are the list of carriers. So that automation, those tool sets that provide somebody that doesn't need to be a seasoned expert of what this lane from Chicago to Arkansas is, because that information is provided with the ability to make a decision now.
It almost gives that new employee the ability to make the same decision or better decision than a seasoned veteran.
Correct. Yeah.
The different models, I think that goes back to cash flow. With what I know to be true in the cradle to grave type market, those guys are so busy that they may not have an opportunity to go get new customers. Where the buy and sell, you've got a separate group that may go to customer acquisition. Is that what you've seen as well?
Yeah, I think the traditional brokers is relationship brokers. So it's generally a complement. Their brokerage growth is dependent on, from the sales aspect, who they're going out and reaching out to, what opportunities do they have. Where the buy and sell just allows that quick entry, or that quick availability of open loads, how they can go and pull those loads in and then connect them up and do it quickly and instantaneously, versus that time lapse of, I've got this load and you've got a couple days to deliver it, or to pick it up.
So I'm a firm believer of the digital freight marketplace and the digitization of freight. I think it adds a level of efficiency that people just can't get to find the right load and the right carrier much faster. Do you see this trend progressing and the digitization of freight growing?
Oh, I do. I think it's here, and it's not going to go anywhere, but continuing to grow and improve. I see that the digital freight market is just, the opportunities are almost exponential. There's the pool is so big, and that growth, that opportunity is going to continue to grow as more technology and more opportunities from other vendors and product development continues. So it is a big push, and it's really going to help that buy and sell market to even get better and more efficient.
I've got a question for you as a McLeod employee, operations employee. Why do people buy our software? What are they looking to achieve when they buy our software?
I think it's data and technology. I think it's automation. I think it's there's several, I think, big factors, but we're our market, our position in the market is based because we provide a good quality product. Not necessarily for everybody, but for the most. We're focused on the customer. We're focused on automation. We're focused on relationships, and I think what we provide is focused on excellence in what we do. And in that relationship is, how do I help you be better, faster, quicker? Again, data. The data that is, I say, entrapped in your database is massive. There's so much information there, and then how you then garner that to make better decisions and be profitable.
I've got a question. I always ask this to all my guests, and if you can answer in 2 minutes or less, if you had advice to give to a person who's held an operations role that you held in the industry before, looking back at your younger self, what advice would that be to give them?
I think from an operational standpoint and working with customers is integrity and how you interact with the customer through an honest approach, and engaging communications is really, I think, is one of the things that we constantly run into and remind our people is that we need to pick up the phone and talk to people. I think building that skill set of being able to talk, not via text, not via email, but physically talk to people is one of the important keys to what we try to do. Because you can understand and you have in that conversation, sometimes tough conversations, is that you can really come to an agreement and understanding of what is needed. And then I think, as you know, some of Tom's rules of do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
Those are important. They're very critical. If I say I'm going to call you, I expect myself to call you. And if I was your customer and you said you would call me, I'm going to expect you're going to do those. And you may not always have the answer, but it's communications. And it's a great skill that I think everybody needs to continue to grow with.
Yep. Well, Thorny, thank you very much for your time today. And thank you to our guests for taking time out of your day to listen to McLeod Insights.